After the airport project undertaken by Japan was left unfinished, Sri Lanka hoped that China would take over. Should China agree? Sri Lanka, a small country in the Indian Ocean that was the first to declare national bankruptcy in the 21st century, handed over the operation rights of the West Pier to Japan and India after China helped it build the Colombo Port City. However, the project of funding the construction of the Colombo International Airport promised by Japan has been shelved for a long time. Under this circumstance, Sri Lanka turned to China, hoping that China could provide it with help. So, should China agree to Sri Lanka's request? Let us take a closer look in this video. Sri Lanka is an island country located on the south side of the Indian Ocean. It is separated from India by the Pak Strait in the northwest, and is only 30 kilometers away from India. Its territory is shaped like a water drop, about 432 kilometers long from north to south, 224 kilometers wide at its widest point from east to west, and has a total area of about 65,610 square kilometers, which is equivalent to the area of Ningxia, China. The country has limited land and relatively scarce resources. Raw materials and energy are mostly imported, and its external dependence is very high. In addition, the country has a weak industrial foundation and a single industrial structure. Agriculture and tourism are the main economic pillars of the country. With a GDP of only $74.4 billion, it is one of the least developed countries in the world. However, the country's geographical location is very critical. It is the only way to cross the Indian Ocean and enter and exit the Pacific Ocean. Its capital, Colombo, is even known as the Crossroads of the East. Colombo is located on the west coast of Sri Lanka, with an area of only 37 square kilometers. It is the largest city in Sri Lanka and also a world-famous artificial seaport. Based on this city, Sri Lanka proposed the strategic idea of building the Colombo Port City and handed the project over to China as a China-Sri Lanka Joint Belt and Road Cooperation Project. The Port City project was officially started in 2014. According to the plan, the project includes land reclamation near the Colombo port, and plans to fill 276 hectares of land within 3 years. The city will take shape within 5 to 8 years, and the future construction scale will exceed 5.3 million square meters. According to the agreement, 108 hectares of land in the port city will belong to Chinese companies for a lease period of 99 years, of which 20 hectares will be permanently donated to China. However, after being obstructed by India, the project was repeatedly stopped, and Sri Lanka also cancelled the agreement to donate 20 hectares of land to China. For this reason, China asked the other party to pay a penalty of $140 million in accordance with the treaty. However, Sri Lanka could not afford it, so after making repeated requests to China, China gave up the claim. However, Sri Lanka once again added 2 hectares of additional land to China on the basis of the leased land stipulated in the agreement. The project resumed work in September 2016, and in January 2019, it successfully completed the filling of 269 hectares. However, after the expansion of Colombo Port City was completed, Sri Lanka handed over the container terminal on the west side of Colombo Port to Japan and India for joint development. In addition, Japan also reached an agreement with Sri Lanka to spend 107 billion rupees to finance the expansion project of the country's Colombo Bandaranak International Airport. According to the plan, the project should be completed in 2023, but until now, the Colombo International Airport project has been shelved. Colombo Bandaranaike International Airport is the airport in the north of Sri Lanka's capital, and one of the country's main international airports. However, the airport's capacity is very limited. Given the importance of Sri Lanka's strategic location, the expansion of the airport will further help the country's tourism and other industries in the future. However, the airport's expansion project has been shelved by Japan for many years. Sri Lanka gradually found that it was hopeless to rely on Japan, so it turned its eyes to China for help. According to reports, the Prime Minister of Sri Lanka personally visited China at the end of March this year. He said that China has promised to help develop Colombo Airport and Hambantota Port. Hambantota Port is the southernmost port in Sri Lanka. The port was built by China in 2007. The port has a water depth of 17 meters and a total construction cost of up to $1.5 billion. China provided it with a preferential loan of $300 million. After the port was opened in 2012, it can be used for large tankers and other ships to dock. According to the agreement, Chinese companies own 70% of the equity of the port. In addition, China has leased the land around the port for 99 years. The port has not only become an important trade transit point and supply station for China in the Indian Ocean, but also an important strategic support for China to expand its influence in the Pacific. However, after the Hambantota Port project was handed over to Chinese companies, it immediately attracted the attention of India. Under frequent pressure from India, Sri Lanka handed over the airport expansion project to Japan. However, Sri Lanka soon encountered a serious debt crisis, and even directly declared national bankruptcy in 2022, causing the airport project to lose part of its funding source, and the Japanese side immediately stopped the construction of the airport. It is also worth noting that Sri Lanka visited China this time. Another major focus is to seek China's assistance to help it solve its debt problem. And the country stated that China has promised to assist Sri Lanka's debt restructuring process and help it develop its economy. However, according to Indian media reports, relevant Sri Lankan officials said that China did not reduce Sri Lanka's loans or debt scale, but only extended the repayment date and adjusted some interest rates. Judging from Sri Lanka's attitude, Japan's shelved airport project should be taken over by China. However, China has not made an official response to this. Due to its weak economic foundation, Sri Lanka itself is easily affected by external factors, especially in the impact of the epidemic in the past 2 or 3 years, and the unstable international situation under the Russian-Ukrainian conflict in 2022. Sri Lanka's energy, food, medicine and other prices have soared, inflation has intensified, and it is in a deep debt crisis. In May 2022, there was also a situation where $78 million of foreign debt could not be repaid. This is also the first debt default since Sri Lanka gained independence from British colonialism in 1948. In July of the same year, Sri Lanka officially declared bankruptcy and became the first sovereign country to default on its debt and go bankrupt in this century. However, Sri Lanka's foreign debt is still expanding. According to relevant media reports, Sri Lanka currently owes $12 billion in debt, of which commercial loans alone are as high as $6 billion, accounting for half of the total debt. China is also one of the country's major creditors, with a debt owed to China of about $3.4 billion, accounting for 10% of the total foreign debt. Europe, the United States and Japan account for a relatively large proportion, with Europe and the United States accounting for more than 1/3 of foreign debt. If Sri Lanka can get help from China, it can indeed alleviate the domestic debt pressure to a great extent. However, Sri Lanka's economy is extremely unstable, and any slight change in the international situation will have a huge impact on the country. In this case, China will also face certain risks and challenges if it rashly provides assistance. It is also worth noting that Sri Lanka is a small country with very weak strength in South Asia. Because it is adjacent to India, it has established close ties with India for a long time in the past. And India has always regarded it as its own backyard, and has achieved control over the country by influencing the country's economy, culture, diplomacy, and other aspects. Not only Sri Lanka, India's geopolitical strategy for neighboring small countries such as Bhutan, Nepal, and the Maldives is basically the same, and it is trying to expand its influence and voice in South Asia and the Pacific region in this way. However, in recent years, with the continuous changes in the geopolitical pattern, small countries such as Bhutan, Nepal, and the Maldives are trying to get rid of their dependence on India as much as possible and truly achieve independent development. However, Sri Lanka not only refused to allow Chinese scientific research ships to dock at its port at the beginning of this year, but also handed over the energy project originally won by Chinese companies to Indian companies in March this year. In summary, Sri Lanka's credibility has greatly declined in the hearts of Chinese companies. If the country does not adjust its strategic decision in time, it will not be conducive to further deepening cooperation between China and Sri Lanka in the future. So, do you think that China should agree to Sri Lanka's request for help? Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more great content. See you next time.